What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Echoes of Elsewhere, the podcast where shadows tell stories, walls whisper secrets, and every abandoned place has a voice, if you know how to listen. I'm your host, Courtney Autumn, and today we're venturing into the forgotten corners of New York State through the lens of someone who doesn't just explore ruins, he documents them with haunting precision. My guest today is John Lazzaro, a documentary photographer, author, and filmmaker whose work doesn't just capture decay, it preserves history. From the eerie halls of Kings Park Psychiatric Center to crumbling churches and vanished railways, John brings these places back to life through his photos and his storytelling. We talk gear, ethics, and the moments that stick with you long after you've left a site. Whether you're into urbex, photography, or just love a good behind-the-scenes journey into forgotten spaces, this episode is for you. But yes, go ahead.
I was interviewed once a few years ago. There's a podcast called The Spooky Show, and I think it was sort of like a true crime podcast, and the host asked me a lot about Kings Park Psychiatric Center, because that's kind of like how I started getting into this. So we were talking a lot about like the history, just sort of like my experiences shooting there and working on the book.
Is that one of the like first places you documented?
That was the first place I documented, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I saw a large theme of it on your YouTube. I was like, wow, he's got five different... Yeah, I was like, he's got 5 different videos on Kings Park. I was noticing that, and I've heard stuff about it, not even just through urbex. I guess like it's known in the paranormal world also, so to speak. So I've heard it pop up a lot, but when I saw it on your YouTube a bunch of times, I was like, I need to know more about this place because it seems like it's got a lot of history. Did you know a lot about Kings Park before you ever went there to document?
No. So I guess it goes back. So I started officially doing it in 2018. So before the pandemic, before, there was a big like influx of people like sort of pursuing this hobby. But for me, I think the interest goes way back to like when I was in high school. So this was 20 years ago. That's how old I am. I used to do a lot of like indoor track and cross country. So we had a local community college that had an indoor track. So we would have night meets there. So it was across the parkway from a psychiatric center, Pilgrim Psychiatric Center. And it was half defunct, half operational. So in order to get back home, I would leave the meet and I'd have to drive through the campus to find the exit for the parkway. And, I was living about half an hour away or so I wasn't too familiar with the area. But at that time, back in 2005, the hospital had already, released a lot of its patients. So it was only operating at a fraction of its, original operating, status, operating power. So a lot of the buildings were just sort of like left there abandoned. And I was always just like really intrigued as to well, why is this hospital closed? Like, why are these buildings just standing there? And it was, I just remember feeling very ominous, especially driving through it at night and being in high school. And it just piqued my curiosity since then. So, I wound up going away to school. I was living and working out of state, for many years. And it wasn't until probably about I moved back in 2016, 2017. And then, I was doing some photography at that point. I was doing a lot of like nature photography because I was living up in Maine. So that's kind of like how I picked up, that hobby. And I was also doing it for work. I was working at a boarding school up there. So I was doing like a lot of like marketing communications work. So naturally photographing the events of the school that sort of, got me into that, that sphere. So, and I just always had that interest of shooting like abandoned spaces, I think since that experience. But I mean, if I were to really like go back and think about it deeply, like even before that, when I was a kid, I was like under 10, I was like a toddler. My mom would take me to like a local preserve, where there was like a park, there was like a bike path and a lake. And I remember there was an old pump house that was sort of sealed up with sheet metal, but there was like a hole in the side that you could look through. and see like all the inner workings of the pump house, like, like the gears and whatnot. And I remember seeing like there was like an old like leather shoe that was just sitting on a beam still in the pump house, and you could tell like it hadn't been touched for ages. And I just remember that was just a very fond memory from childhood. So we could even go back there. Get interested. But yeah. So where I live now on Long Island, I'm about 20 minutes away from Kings Park. So back when I moved back, was looking for places to photograph, and I remembered Pilgrim. So I went back there only to find that those buildings had all been taken down. So I was like, no. This stinks. But I had heard about Kings Park. So I went there, and what's unique about that place is that, it once was, a state hospital, a psychiatric center, but now it's situated in a New York State park. So you essentially can park wherever, you can walk around wherever you want on the grounds, but the buildings are, technically off limits.
Ooh,
and so when I found that out, naturally I fell in love with the place. Like, when that place was in peak operation, there was 150 buildings or so. There's about, 45 or so left. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's huge.
So that's the long answer for that.
I love that, though. You're like, as soon as I found out I could go out there and park.
Right.
Because that's always the primary hassle. It's like step one to figure out where you're going to situate yourself to get away with this stuff.
Well, but that's like one of the fun things about, I guess doing this hobby is sort of, like the trial and error part, kind of figuring things out for yourself without, having someone tell you like, yeah, this is what you do, X, Y, and Z. Like it's just a very like primitive process, which, which is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm, for sure. It teaches you kind of how to trust yourself a lot along the way, I believe.
Definitely.
I was going to ask you, do you get permission ever to do a lot of these places? Because I know that in one specific video, I can't remember which exact location, but you had some men with you and they were explaining to you like the history of the place. You were on a boat with them at one point.
Oh, yeah.
So I know that you probably do get maybe a mixture, I believe. I don't know if you do a lot of like illegal trespassing. So what is your kind of take on getting permission?
Well, I mean, so in that particular video, there's an old tide mill. Also in the town where I live, that was a permission with the local historical society. So like those guys, they took me through and sort of explains the workings of that. And that place is unique because it predates the Revolutionary War. So, and it's still standing. So like that was really cool to see.
Yeah.
The other places, I guess no. Well, I'll put it like this. Like, I haven't gotten any forewarning that I was, where I wasn't supposed to be. So, yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
That was really interesting, though, because you don't see a lot of people work in actual other people to kind of tell the background that may know more about it, or this is kind of their expertise. So I really like the take on that.
Yeah.
It features kind of different people, but I just thought that was so neat. I was like, wow, that's a way to get history from like, not just reading it on the internet, but actual
people that actually lived it. Yeah. I mean, especially with Kings Park. I mean, there's so many people that used to work there at some point in their lives, still sort of reside in the area. So, like I'll run into them like either at the gallery or if I do an art fair and stuff, like they'll come up to me and they're like, oh, yeah, like I worked there, when I was in college, like that job, like put me through college and stuff. And, now I'm retired, I collect a state pension. I mean, it's just, the stories are just, just nothing short of just wonderful and really like inspiring and, thought provoking.
For sure. Yeah. I didn't even really consider that through your gallery. You get to make those connections because people see your pictures and they're like, oh, I used to work there, or my grandma or my mom or something.
Sure. Or have some sort of a connection there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally. So interesting. So tell me more about how that process evolved for you with being featured in a gallery and so on.
Yeah. The life of an artist. Yeah. Well, it's been everything from extremely frustrating at times to wonderfully fulfilling and probably everything in between. Yeah. It's been definitely like a wild ride, but I mean, I love it. Like I'm at a wonderful gallery right now. So I guess, this goes back. Okay. So go back to like 2018. So I'm back on Long Island. I'm exploring Kings Park and stuff. I start taking photos. And I'm going into more and more of the buildings there. I mean, there's like 45 or so. So naturally, I'm kind of like overwhelmed. Just like, where do you start? Like, what do you capture? Like, how do I begin to like document this place? At that point, I was just still trying to figure things out. And at some point I decided like, it might be cool just to make like a photo book just showing the history of this place. Cause there's not a whole lot of information out there online, save for like a couple books, a couple like archival photos that I was able to find just connecting with people over the years. But anyway, there was a local gallery in town that I knew of that had what do you call photo salons. And basically what that is that you can attend. It's basically just like a meeting of photographers and you all like kind of showcase your work and you get like critiqued and you get feedback, based on like what you show. So naturally, like, I go in and like I'm an amateur. These people have been, in some cases teaching photography for many decades.
Were you so nervous?
No. I felt, I don't get nervous like that because it's just, you can't be intimidated. I think you just kind of have to go in with like just a sense of confidence, but like just being okay. Like, you're probably gonna, get ripped apart, but that's fine. It just kind of like, it makes you a little more.
I'm attending my roast, but I'll be okay.
Yeah. Believe me, I've had to put up with a bunch of, but anyway. So I started showing the photos that I took there and I was getting like some good feedback and stuff. And I think one of the members there encouraged me, look, like we're accepting applications for members to join the gallery. And you can, if you're interested, like definitely you can submit a portfolio formally, you fill out this application. So I did that and I ended up joining the gallery. It was like the spring of 2019. Yeah. Wow. So that was the local gallery in town. So it's called Photo Gallery. So, and then probably a few months later, I ended up joining another gallery, which was in the town over from me. Interestingly enough, I was on a date. I was grabbing coffee with this woman, and I'm just, we're just talking, telling her about like what I like to do for fun. I was telling her about the gallery. The table over from us, there were 3 other women who overheard my conversation and were like, "Oh, like, excuse me, John, I couldn't help but overhear you. We run a gallery here in Northport. It's called the Firefly Gallery. We're actually moving our location and we're looking for more artists to join. Like, would you be interested?" And I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay." So, I was already part of one. And you have a thing with galleries where I'm from is like, you can't join more than one gallery that's in like a certain radius of one another because like it's almost like a conflict of interest. But in this case, they were sort of far apart. So we were just talking about that, that might have not being a problem. So I joined the second gallery at that time. And that's the one I'm still at today. So I'm part of Firefly now. Yeah.
How long has that been now that you've been with just them?
Since 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so 6 years.
So you must like it.
It's awesome. Yeah. So the way that gallery works is there's about 50 of us. We're all local artists. It's sort of like a cooperative. So each artist rents out a space in the gallery. And it's not just photographers. The other gallery was strictly photographers. This one, it's a little bit of everything. So we have like watercolors, oil painters, jewelers. We have a sculptor. Photographers. Yeah. So like in my case, like I rent out a wall space. Other people, they rent out like, like a shelving unit and stuff. So it's very like inviting when you go in. There's just so much art on display and it kind of takes people on like a little journey through the store.
Nice.
Or the shop, rather. Yeah.
How far away is that from where you are?
Like 10 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's convenient.
Yeah.
How do you decide what to put up in the gallery? Do you decide that on your own? And how often do you change things? And how does that work?
Yeah, no, I decided on my own. I can, usually I try to like update my work, every, 3 weeks or so. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's way more often than I thought. I thought you were like going to say 3 times a year.
No. Because you don't want it to like look stale. And there's periods of time where, I just haven't been out shooting. So I don't have a lot of new work on display. And it's also like, it's expensive to get stuff framed and stuff. So you sort of have to kind of, take that into account. But ideally, I like to update things every 3 weeks or so. Yeah. But in terms of like the pricing and stuff, like that's all I determine that.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty.
Do you do like a lot of events at the gallery or anything like that?
Yeah, I've done a solo show. I did a book signing there. Nothing recently, just because I'm still working on like bodies of work. Mm-hmm. But yeah, those have been fun. And then when I was at the other gallery, I had two solo exhibitions, so those were
nice.
fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Tell me more about the book that you published.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, so we'll go back to Kings Park. So back when this was like 2018 to 2019, I was traveling around the grounds, still exploring. I got the idea to do a book. One of the first shots that I took for the project, it wasn't a project at this point, but I was going into one of the buildings, which I later learned is called Building 22. And you have no way of knowing this unless you actually like dig deep into records. It was an admissions building. So if you were a patient being admitted to Kings Park Psychiatric Center, chances are you were housed in that building for a period of 20, 30 days. You were assessed, and based on what your needs were, you either stayed there or you were moved to a different facility on the grounds. So I remember there was like a wooden board that was sort of ripped off a door, and it's a 4-story building. And I was walking around with my camera, and I was like, oh, like this is, enticing. So like I go in, I mean, the hallway is just, it's trashed. There's about an inch of water on the ground. You can see like all the piping has been ripped off, and the asbestos tubes are sort of like littered the floor. And it looked to me sort of like what you would think a normal hospital ward would look like. Yeah. So one of the rooms that I went into, the paint is peeling off, and I step all the way in, and I could see there's actually a painting that's still adhered to the wall. And it was like a still life painting. It was like flowers in a jug with some fruit on a table. And you could tell it had been there for, a long time. And there was just years upon years of peeling paint because you could see the different colors, the different layers. And I was just like, wow, this is incredible. So like I shot that. And I like to think from that moment on, like that photo changed my life. Like that's how I got the idea to do the book. And I ended up calling it The Walls Still Talk, a photographic journey through Kings Park Psychiatric Center. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to show like, this is what happens, or this is what happened since the hospital closed. Like these are the effects of deinstitutionalization. And I wanted to throw in some history, some archival photos, which I was able to find just doing a lot of research online. So, that led to that idea. And I self-published it. So, I designed the entire layout, the cover, and it essentially like opened a lot of doors for me, for the next book that I did in ways like I never would have imagined, just simply taking that shot. I think like for anyone doing this hobby, there's one site you visit or there's one shot you take that sort of begins it all. I mean, like, for me, that was it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So interesting. I love that you titled it that because that's like so full circle.
Yeah. Well, so what I later found out is, so there's actually a Kings Park Facebook group. So I posted that picture, just trying to get some more information. So like I later learned that, this was actually a patient's room at one point, and that was sort of the decor that they had to look at, like, while they were there. And that's just wild to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So interesting. You would never think that a decaying painting would inspire a whole new chapter of life.
Right. Yeah.
And that's always so interesting when you find stuff like that, especially when you can still really see it. And then it takes you on a whole mental journey, like you said, and you're just like, who interacted with this, who saw this, you start thinking about the patients, their families, all that stuff.
Right.
So yeah, so interesting.
Yeah.
How do you usually approach your researching for places? Do you generally like go to a place and then have the interest to research it, or do you tend to know a lot about a place before you even go?
So I think, with the case with Kings Park, like I didn't know anything. So I think it was sort of like I was learning as I was going. Mm-hmm. Now, when I go out to places, I try to do a little research beforehand, but I try to just know some basics because I want to be like kind of surprised in a way, like, because I want to go in as unbiased as possible and just kind of shoot like in a true documentary fashion. So yeah. If I'm writing about something, it's a more extensive research after the fact. And when I display my work, I like to have just like little captions that give viewers like a little context as to exactly what they're looking at. Mm-hmm. Not like a whole history, but just, just a little something just to sort of, get their, their mind,
the gears going.
Get the gears going. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense. How many times do you think you've been to Kings Park altogether?
Hundreds. Yeah.
Oh my
like,
goodness.
if you think about it, like just that year when I was doing the book, like it was like every weekend or so, like I was going, it's only like 20 minutes from me.
Wow.
So, and there would be times like, I would go, like it didn't get what I wanted. Like, the photos came out like shit. Like there was one time like I showed up and like I left my memory card at home.
No.
Hours away, like, yeah.
That's like showing up and your camera's dead.
Yeah, exactly. Or, there were times like I just went like, just not to photo, just to kind of like go and just, sort of poke around and get like an idea of,
Do you ever run into any trouble out there, like homeless people, anything like that?
No, not at Kings Park. Definitely, there's run into like kids just being not smart.
The usual.
Yeah. But I like to go like early in the morning. So like I never really encountered anything. And that's like, I started going like alone too. Like,
oh, okay. Were you not initially going alone when you first started?
No, when I first started, I was going alone. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
But then, just throughout that whole like, experience, like, I started meeting other photographers, sort of doing that. And then like, like posting on Instagram and yeah. So you kind of like started networking from there. And, I think like for a lot of explorers, at least like in this area, Kings Park was, has probably been a start for them as well, just because of, how it's situated, being in a public park. Stuff. So it's, it's almost, inviting in a way. Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like such an interesting place, to be honest with you.
Well, it's fun because I'll take people there, or I'll meet up with other, photographers that don't have experience, I guess, doing urbex. Take them there, and just to kind of see them, be like in awe of the spot is kind of like fulfilling in a way. Like, I'm always curious to see like how they're, how they sort of like define the space through their work. I've done a couple of like college workshops there, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, so I got my my master's through Quinnipiac, and I did an interview with them a few years ago for my the New York book that I did, and one of the professors who teaches journalism there is also from Long Island. So he reached out. He's like, I have a couple students, that I teach photography to, would you be interested in maybe doing like a sort of like a hands-on workshop, at Kings Park? And I was like, yeah, like that's awesome. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow. So take me on that journey. Like, what exactly do you do with them?
Well, we just, we may or may not have snuck in, and we're like, okay, this is the space. We're here to give you any feedback or help you with like your settings on the camera, shooting in like low light situations. But yeah, you just want to see how you like define the space. And I try to share some history of exactly like, which building we're in and like the purposes served, obviously just like approaching it with like respect and stuff. But yeah,
totally. Yeah.
It's more of like just, kind of like a photo workshop.
Yeah. So you kind of give them like pointers on what to do. I don't think a lot of people realize it until they're in those spaces that you don't have a lot to work with as far as like lighting is concerned. And then
it was definitely
lots of mistakes can be made.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely like a learning experience for sure.
Yeah. And that's the best way. It's like doing a workshop in a place like that is actually the most genius thing I've ever heard, especially from a photographer standpoint, because you do not know how to prepare. And like, you don't know until you know. And that's kind of when you don't want to get home after going through all the trouble of getting there and being there and then look at your pictures and say, well, I can't do anything.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Been there. Yep.
Yeah. And I think we all have, but you just kind of gave them like that corner we wish we could all cut the photography genre of things and not have to go through that experience, especially doing what we do, because we can't, we can, but it's more difficult to just like revisit and go through the whole journey again just to get there and retake the pictures. So yeah.
And for me, like I'm self-taught. Like I never took a photography class, so it's kind of like I studied like undergrad, like I studied English and film study.
Oh my God, that's really actually amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's just like I was always interested in it. For me, it just I was just at a point in my life where like, okay, like this is the opportunity to go. I only wish like I would have started exploring like way back in like 2005. That would have been like the golden era. I mean, think about everything that we've lost, from that period up until, a few years ago.
Yeah, I feel the same pain because I've been doing it on and off since 2009. And
Oh, wow.
back then it was not like, we were also more limited on our phone cameras and all this other stuff. So it's just like all these different factors come into play where documenting it wasn't as much the priority as it was to just go do it.
Yeah.
And I wish that I would have known and had more evidence of all the stuff I used to see, because I never even bought. I probably have like the most pixelated pictures on a flip phone.
Yeah.
From, from then.
Right.
So, I don't know, but I get what you're saying. And it is, you just think about all those places that are no longer there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I think it's also important to sort of document these places too. I mean, they're only here for a finite amount of time. And even just doing that project on Kings Park, a couple of the buildings were taken down shortly after I self-published the book and stuff. So yeah.
It's almost like you have some of the last remaining evidence of those spaces.
Sure. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure many others do. I mean, that it's been photographed pretty extensively.
Of course. Yeah. But still, that's even cool to say, that you took those pictures and however many months or whatever later it's gone. So there are no more people getting pictures of it after that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell me, is Kings Park your favorite place, or do you have a different place that's your favorite that you've explored?
Well, I mean, it's near and dear to me just because that's where I got started. Since I finished that book project in 2019, I started traveling a little more, like upstate, like to Connecticut, New Jersey, for some spots. Like by this point, I was just meeting some other photographers and going on like little, like little trips, like little adventures. So in Staten Island, we have a Seaview Hospital. So that place was very unique because it has a lot of historical significance to tuberculosis as a disease. So a lot of the pioneering research that was done to find a cure for that was done at Seaview. So a few of the patient pavilions are still there today. And there's a lot of like old equipment left behind. And when I say like old, like there's wooden wheelchairs, like there's old beds.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I remember I first went there with a couple other photographers. I would say it was probably like a week, maybe 2 weeks before the pandemic started and like New York was shut down. So this was like March of 2020. Yeah. So for me, and I think you look at like the similarities between COVID and tuberculosis, one's viral, the other's bacterial, but there's still how that they were approached and, combating the two diseases or the two viruses rather are very similar in a historical perspective. So like that was just very interesting to me for sure.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of my favorite spots. Also way upstate, almost on the Canadian border, there was a place called Newton Falls Paper Mill. And that's being demolished like as we speak right now.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're lucky to have gotten out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I love a good paper mill. Those are always the best for some reason.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was for shooting that spot for my other book. So I actually met up with two people, never met in person before. There's a wonderful couple, up in that part of New York, and I was like, I reached out to them. I was like, hey, like, can we explore like Newton Falls? Like, I'm looking to get up there to shoot, and we spent like the entire day at the facility, and I think we maybe covered like 75% of it. I mean, that's how massive it was.
Right.
Yeah, they were just super genuine couple, and we just had like a good time.
That's great. Yeah, I love connecting with people over this stuff because that's always what you find. You find the best people.
Yeah.
It's all about like-mindedness too,
Definitely. Yeah. How you approach it is, I think, probably like the most important part, and also like how you conduct yourself, like once you're, once you're in. Yeah.
Totally. Have you ever gotten in trouble for doing any of this before?
No, honestly, no. And very fortunate that, I haven't run into any issues, nothing with like law enforcement other than, like, hey, what are you doing? I mean, there have been a couple instances where I kind of had to like dodge security. This was a funny story. So back, I think this was probably about 6 years ago. So I had finished the Kings Park book at this time. And, I got the idea to do the Vanishing New York project. So there was a spot in the city in Brooklyn called the Greenpoint Terminal Market. And back in 2006, there was a massive fire that ripped through the entire factory there. And there was one building, like one structure that was still standing with pieces of concrete that had fallen out during the fire. So there was a street artist that went and painted like a skull around that. So like the two holes in the building were sort of eye sockets, and then they drew like a jawbone. Yeah. So I guess in the urbex community, it was known as Skull Silo. So I was looking at it, and this is what kind of makes, I think, like urban exploration so fun, is like figuring out like, okay, like, you know, you don't have any information on it. So how can you get there to shoot it? Because I've seen photos online at this point of it. So people are, you know, somehow photographed it. So at that point, I think they were doing like construction on the area, the property. And I'm like, well, like I could walk the water line. I mean, that's one option. All right, I'm just going to like drive there. I'll figure it out. So I see the building like from the road, like I park, you know, I'm in Brooklyn, like it's the city, you know, I mean, there's people out and about. But there's like a fence that's sitting high enough from the ground, or like the bottom is high enough from the ground that like, okay, if I were to lay on my back and roll under with my camera, I think I could just run in, like get a cool shot of it and run out. And I think it's a construction site at this point. Yeah, I have like no idea what I'm doing. And so I go in, I start like snapping a few photos, and like I start hearing like this whistling noise. And I thought like, all right, maybe it's like a bird or something. And I'm like looking, because like no one's around. I mean, this is early. No one's around in the vicinity. So I'm looking around, and like I hear like yelling and whistling. So like I'm looking around. There's one of the skyscrapers nearby. There's a worker on the roof. Oh no. And he's like waving, like move or like get out, I think. And first off, like I didn't even know if he was directing it at me. So like I look around, and like I point to myself, meaning like are you talking to me? And then like he's getting, you know, more and more visibly like, you know, with his hand like move, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I think I got what I need. So like, yeah, I get out.
That's for me.
But yeah, so that's, I remember that was just like a funny, like, yeah, a funny experience.
Those are things you really don't know how to take.
Yeah. I mean, I was so new, like to doing it. And I think back, like, you know,
I think that's a mistake anyone would make, not being in the area normally either. You know, it's so hard to like miss certain factors if you're not from there, or you're not always in Brooklyn, or you're not always staring at this corner of where you're at. So it's just like, you don't know to take this huge skyscraper into consideration.
Right. Well, no, I honestly didn't think like he was like motioning to me, like, you know, yelling at me. Oh, look, this is New York City. I mean, people are doing that to me regardless. Like it's
like that could have been the traffic.
So
it is crazy around there. I don't even know how you drive around there, to be honest with you. I had to Uber everywhere. I was like, I'm not dare. No, I will not.
Have you been to New York City before? Or
yes, I was there last year, and
really.
I like to experience it, and I want to go back to New York, but I'm not going to go back to the city. I need to go maybe where you are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, did you like physically like drive through like Manhattan, or Courtney? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, but like I said, we Ubered everywhere.
Okay.
I wasn't driving. Yeah. So I was like, this is just no joke. And, you know, like, I don't know if you've ever been south, but everyone is very slow around here. Like, the light will have changed to green, and people are like, it'll be 10 seconds before anyone decides to let off their brakes and get a move on. In New York, it's like, you gotta go. You gotta go fast, or you're going to get yelled at. You're going to get a gun held up at you. You're going to have 18 people honking at you. Like, no joke.
I mean, there's very little patience around here, you know. I mean, Long Island is the same way. I mean, I can't wait to move off, you know. I gave myself like 40 is like the hard out, you know, like I'm out of here. But
where are you gonna go?
I hear South Carolina is nice.
It is.
I've never been, honestly. I was thinking like maybe like upstate, you know. I have family like up in, you know, upstate, like Rochester area. So,
nice. Yeah. Okay. Is it like better there for driving?
Yeah, I mean, a little less traffic. Yeah. Okay. Everything is very congested around here. So like usually like if I go in the city for work, you know, if I'm like shooting an event, I'm just taking the train in. It's so much easier. And then like the
Oh,
subway.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we
It
have
probably takes you like 3 hours just to find somewhere to park once you're there.
It's rough. I mean, and then when you do, it's like, it's crazy expensive. We now have a congestion toll in the city. So like you get depending on like where you're driving, there's cameras that'll, take a picture and you'll get billed for that. So like it's supposed to be an emphasis on like not driving. They want to like, try to like
oh my gosh, they don't even want you to drive out.
Yeah.
That's why everything's so expensive, like to park and everything else, because they're like, we don't even want you to have a car.
Insane. Yeah. I mean,
where did you go to school? Because you said you went out of state for a little while. Is that right?
Yeah, I went to University of Vermont.
Okay, nice. Did you like it there?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah,
it was great.
You didn't want to go back to New York.
Well, I mean, like I'm, from here originally and stuff. Yeah. That was a fun experience because, you're living away from home. I mean, you meet a lot of, just like cool people and stuff. At that point, I started in 2005 and I was a hardcore Yankees fan, going up. And this is Red Sox.
You didn't know anything else existed.
Yeah. And this is the year after they won the World Series, or the Red Sox won the World Series. So naturally, there's still a lot of, like anti-New York vitriol stuff going on up there. But it was fun. That's how like I got like into like the creative sphere. Like, I started doing like documentaries and stuff while I was at school. So I think that kind of like opened the door for photography. For me.
Yeah. So whenever you were doing like nature photography, were you already doing stuff outside that kind of prompted that? Were you like hiking a lot or doing stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah. Like hiking, running, I still like run today, not, competitively, just to, like stay in shape and, stay healthy. Yeah.
It's good for you. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have like a least favorite explore that you've done that you're just like, I'll never go back there and I don't care about this place?
Oh, let's see, a least favorite explore. I don't think so. I mean, like, I think each place like I visit has been like unique in some respect. I mean, there are places that I've shot like where the photos like I wasn't super happy with.
Mm-hmm. Do you have like a most challenging explore that you've done that has been like most physically difficult to get into or just challenging in some regard?
Yeah. Well, there was one. So a couple of years ago, so my parents now live in Vermont. So
that's so funny.
Yeah.
Y'all traded spaces.
Yeah. Well, they moved there during the pandemic. But in the northeast part of Vermont, there's an old radar tower that's at the top of a mountain. Ooh. So when I was up there visiting one time for Thanksgiving, this was a couple of years ago, my dad and I, like Thanksgiving morning, like we drove up. So it's about an hour and a half from where they live up into, where the radar base is. So, and, they had snow at that point. That's just, to give you an idea of how hard Vermont gets hit. Mm-hmm. So we drove up and I mean, the road was like, super narrow. I mean, my car was, I think maybe just about a year old at that point. The road was like, unpaved, like uneven. We drive up to the top, Dad's just waiting in the car. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to like, go out, take a couple shots. I had my drone with me. So I take it up and, there's like this big gust of wind. There's sort of like a little storm going on. It takes the drone like well over, well outside the radar base and like sort of like over the forest, like in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And I have my controller, like, like through my phone, I can see, it's hooked up to the controller, like, it's getting further and further out, it's not responding to the, like the joysticks and stuff. And I can see the batteries are like getting lower and lower. And I'm like, I tell my dad, like, yeah, I think I'm going to lose my drone. Like this is not coming back. So, sure enough, I'm sitting at the top of the mountain with him and like, I'm watching the battery just die. And then, the connection cuts out. So like the last thing I have of it is like the GPS coordinates of like where the drone was last, up in the air. So like I lost my drone at the top of the radar base somewhere.
Oh no.
Yeah. So now
you never retrieved it.
No, I mean, what I try, like, cause like at that point I go into the woods. I'm like, it's 300 yards away. It doesn't seem that far, I guess.
But in the snow.
But in the snow, I go in, and I don't know if you've ever heard what like a spruce trap is. Okay, so like if you're hiking like in the woods and there's like a fresh layer of snow, you can get stuck because if you like walk in through like the trees, like like evergreens, the snow builds up at the base of the trees, like like spruce trees and whatnot, and you don't know how deep it goes. So I get stuck in that trying to go find it, and then like Dad pulls me out, and I'm like, all right, that's it, like it's gone. We have to like drive back, and then we have Thanksgiving dinner. It's explained to everyone, like we went on the adventure, like lost the drone, and like everyone is like shocked, like you lost it. I'm like, there's nothing I could do. I mean, I wasn't even upset at that point. It was just like so that was frustrating, but it was kind of fun in a way.
It's a good story, at least, But that does suck. And again, it's just another thing you don't take into consideration, like a big gust of wind randomly coming through and taking your drone, sailing it away.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of silly, but it's it was also like the older version of the DJI Mavic. So it's now the one that I have now. I made sure to purchase flyaway protection, and it's a little, it's a little more, sturdy, like with like wind and whatnot. So
like, I had to pay extra for that, but I did it.
No, it's worth it. I mean, to any photographer, definitely, like because I mean, things happen.
I was gonna ask you too, because I ask a lot for like advice just for urbex in general, but since you specifically are a photographer and that's what you do in these spots, do you have any tips that you would give someone who's more interested in the photography element of abandoned places, especially if they're just starting out?
I mean, definitely shoot with a tripod. Some people just like to carry handheld. I strongly recommend shooting with a tripod, especially with the lighting situations. You want to exposure bracket your shots. So just to kind of show you like how, I guess, far I've come, like I used to shoot in HDR mode. So basically with that, like your camera is taking 3 shots and then blending them together. The average person is probably not going to see, notice anything, but they look a little like weird. And while I was doing this, like I kind of started to notice that like once it was sort of pointed out to me. So, ideally, you want a computer to sort of bracket your shots together, not the camera. So I would recommend definitely do a tripod and set your camera up so it can bracket shots and play with the exposure settings, because that's going to be the most useful tool in getting like the most accurate visual like representation of what's in front of you.
Totally. I agree. Especially when you're shooting in the dark.
Especially when you're shooting in the dark.
Is there like an element to the symmetry of the photo that the tripod helps with too, like to keep your photos straight and whatnot?
It does, yeah. So definitely, it helps keep your photos straight too. And then like when you bracket, like it's you're not the camera's not shaking too, so like you're not going to have like any distortion or aberrations. When you're
totally Yeah, I hate when I put my phone on that setting by accident. And sometimes it does it naturally when you go into a darker space where it tries to adjust the lighting kind of for you, and it tells you to hold still, and it's just like that 2 seconds feels like forever when you're in an abandoned place and you're just having to hold your phone. I'm like, I cannot stay still in this moment.
I mean, there's always going to be an element of shake too, so like the tripod just
totally
that.
Yeah, maybe I need to bring like one of those clip things I can like clip my phone onto and then hook it onto something so I don't have to hold it and be responsible. That's like the tripod equivalent for a phone.
I mean, look, like there have been times like when I've been like out shooting and, for some reason, like the camera's just not working out, or, like the lens is just not appropriate for like the space. Like having your phone is like, it's a useful tool. There have been times I've whipped out the phone and I've gotten frustrated and stuff. Yeah.
You're like, screw this camera.
Yeah.
I get it. Do you have any bucket list spots that you want to go to?
There's parts of the country that I still want to visit that I haven't been to yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Are they near you, or do you have like any in New York that you still want to go to?
I do want to go down south more. So there's some hospitals down south. Like for me, like if you were to ask me, like, what do I like to shoot in terms of like, what's your favorite type of like abandoned building? I mean, I'm going to say like hospitals, sanatoriums. Like I love history in general, and like medical history is just something very unique to me. I mean, I come from a family of medical professionals. So like,
Really?
I'm doing like this sort of craft. It's just, I'm kind of like the outsider in a way, which is cool. But like I just like anything medical related is just really interesting to me. So like there's a couple hospitals down, like in Georgia, like Alabama, that I want to visit. So yeah. I mean, I think we know what they are, but
the iconic ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one that's actually down the street from me. It's a tuberculosis hospital.
Yes. Okay. I don't know if you remember, but we. I think we may have exchanged back and forth about that because I thought it was getting taken down at one point. It's for a project that I'm working on right now. Well, yeah.
I see.
Okay, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Is it the TB? It's the state hospital.
Yeah. It's like thing behind. Yeah. The Palmetto division. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I want to get in there so badly. I went.
Yeah.
But I think at one point it wasn't as heavily gated as it is now. I've seen people go out there like some years ago and there was no fence at all.
Oh, wow.
And there's the tall building, and then there's the Palmetto Division one behind it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the whole, from the tall building, like the side of it, all the way around that Palmetto Division one, it's like gated now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, one day there's going to be a hole in this fence, and I'm not going to have been the one to put it there, but I'll go through it once it's there.
So that has actually been like one of the places on my list. There's a new book project that I've been working on for the past 5 years. Nice. Yeah.
Ooh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it about hospitals?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Very, very specific hospitals though. Yeah. So
Gotcha.
So I've been doing like a lot of traveling recently. I was in North Dakota end of March. So
doing stuff for that.
Shooting, yeah. And also like shooting for fun too. I guess we were talking about like just advice for photographers. So aside from the tripod, shoot for fun. Like it's important to like just love what you do. Like don't shoot for the sake of any reason other than just like enjoying the actual experience. Like I found personally, like when you shoot for a specific result, you're entering like dangerous territory.
Totally.
Yeah. Because it just like, and that I think like reflects in your work, because like, it's just, you're focusing on the wrong things, and it's just, you don't want to get into that mindset. That's something that I've kind of learned. And like, there have even been times like over the past 7 years or so that I've been doing this, where I've just like, I've taken like little breaks, here and there, just to sort of like allow myself to recharge. Like I'm not shooting for a book. Like I'm not shooting for a particular like deadline or like a contest or an exhibition. Like that's important too, like even if you travel, like visit spots that, you have pinned, but they're not for any particular purpose. It's just, something you want to visit for fun. And, certainly, you might be surprised like when you get there. So that's another advice I just thought of. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And that's so true, because you are right. A lot of people don't focus enough on their own authentic take of the place. And I think that's really what gets people's attention, is when you're not doing it with the motive to look a certain way, or you're trying too hard for this picture, or whatever the case is, and I think that does often resonate with people in the photography itself. So, and I always appreciate that people, because photography is such a, it's a vast open field of people who call themselves photographers, and the ones who actually are photographers, and all the people in between. And not that there's any more like, there's one isn't more valid than the other, in my opinion. I think if you're making money, obviously doing what you love, then that's obviously like, I think most of our incentive and most of our goals in that regard.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the people who stand out, just from their pictures. Their name doesn't even have to be attached to it. I can pick it out of a lineup, and it can be the picture of the same building done by 7 people, and I can say that's so and so. And I think that's like the only way to get there is to be authentic, and do it your own way.
Sure.
That's super great advice. Yeah. So what's next for you on the agenda, other than another book, obviously?
I'm heading down to Arkansas next month.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice. Okay.
For a workshop. So it's one of those after the final curtain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's a theater down there, and
Nice.
there's some other photographers I know that are going down, and never been. Have a couple of spots pinned, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Nice. So you'll make a trip out of it.
Yeah, definitely make a trip out of it. I think the South is. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience down there, like shooting down there or just visiting rather. So it's definitely part of the country that I want to spend a little more time in and just like explore and.
Wait till the summer's over.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, I mean, is it hot now? Like what?
It's hot already.
Oh really?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I will let you get into the last thing that I like to do, which is the explorer's track. If you have a song that's like relative to your journey as a photographer or an explorer or something that you like to listen to get you in the mood to explore or anything like that.
Well, it's a lot of Taylor Swift. No, I'm just kidding. For me, so recently I've been listening to a lot of The National.
Okay.
And I like Sam Fender.
Okay.
So those are good. Those are good groups to listen to, especially if you're on like a long like road trip. Also, there's a band called The War on Drugs. So like combination of those three. Yeah, they're all really good.
That's good. Road
specifically, Sam Fender, "Getting Started."
Okay.
Good song.
Oh,
he's kind of like, if anyone listening is not familiar with him, he's probably like the British version of Bruce Springsteen. Like great, like great guitar anthems.
Yeah. That's so good. Okay, if you want to tell everyone where we can find you, like social media, YouTube, anything like that.
Sure. So social media, you can follow me at Burning Meta on Instagram. And then YouTube, it's just my name. So it's, and then photo. So John Lazzaro photo on YouTube. So I have a couple of interviews that I've done with former employees of Kings Park Psychiatric Center. So like, one of my goals, one of my projects, it's like, I like to do more of that and sort of, put that out there as well. So yeah, the YouTube's kind of fallen by the wayside, but yeah.
Are you going to put any content up that has to do with the book that you're working on in like video format?
Yes, I have a couple videos that I'm sitting on right now. So I think like right now, like that project's, I'm sorry to be like so vague about it. It's just,
no, I totally understand.
It's, I'm waiting to hear back from a publisher for it.
I see.
Yeah. So it's a different publisher than which published my last book, Vanishing New York. So we're just waiting on that, and then I can kind of like put a little more out there. So,
no, that makes sense. Yeah.
I think we covered a lot of good ground. I will say, like, if you're a photographer out there and you're looking to showcase your work, or if you do urban exploration or whatnot, definitely like look online for like photo exhibitions you could submit your work to. I mean, there's a lot of themed ones that pop up. So anything revolving around like new topographics or like urban infrastructure, anything like that, you'll see those themes. Definitely submit your work. I mean, there's a lot of photographers, explorers out there that I aspire to that have influenced my own work. So, if that's something that you're interested in, I know our gallery, the Firefly Gallery, which I'm a part of, we have an abandoned haunts themed show coming up at the end of the year, which Matthew Christopher is going to be the judge. So he's the Abandoned America guy who also works.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
That'll be an interesting one.
Yeah. No, we're excited for that.
That's so cool. And that's such good advice too, because I think some people don't even know where to start with how to showcase their work or anything.
Yeah. And even, depending where you live, your local library might even have a gallery space too. So aside from joining the art gallery I was in, libraries started to reach out to me for book talks, like artist presentations. And they also asked me to like, do you want to show your work in our gallery? Like you could put it up for a month or so. Like we wrote that every month. So like that's an opportunity to, for your local community, showcase your work. So there's definitely avenues out there, to pursue, for anyone looking to do that.
Yes. Yeah. Google is your friend.
Yeah. Actually, there's one story I figured this is cool. to,
Yeah, totally.
okay.
Go for it. Yeah.
So quick. So I finished the Wall Still Talk. It was like in 2019. So at that point, I got the idea to do a Vanishing New York, Ruins Across the Empire State. So I was, traveling more. I was exploring more, like upstate New York, sort of going throughout the different regions of New York State. So initially, like I wanted to find a publisher for the Kings Park book. And there was about 25 or so like literary agents that I reached out to trying to pitch the book idea. And none of them bid on it. They were like, it's not really marketable. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll just do like a self-publishing route. This is something I just kind of had to like self-teach myself how to do. So when I finished that project, one of the agents that I spoke to actually reached back out to me. She's like, oh, like, I see you went this route, like, congratulations. Happy that you wound up getting this project done for yourself. And I was like, thank you. Like, I actually had this new one I'm working on. So I pitched her the idea for Vanishing New York, and she wound up helping me get that published. So that was picked up by a publisher down in Pennsylvania, which was really cool because like being a writer, being an author, it's something like I've ever wanted to do since I was, 6, 7 years old. So that was just a really like fulfilling experience. I mean, the fact that book just took 3 years alone to do, from inception to when I had the book physically in my hands, and the majority of it was done during the pandemic. So like when New York was locked down, like I was just out traveling, trying to link up with other explorers, like networking and stuff, going through a map with pins on it. It was such like just a fun, like fulfilling experience. And I think to cap it off, the publisher that picked it up, they do a barbecue every year for their authors down in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
So I was able to meet at that time. There was a bit of a delay in Vanishing New York getting published because of the supply chain issues associated with the pandemic. COVID. Yeah. And at that point, I was starting to schedule like book talks and whatnot here on Long Island. So I was getting like a little, like nervous about that. Like, am I going to have the books in time? So they had a wonderful production manager over at the publisher that was sort of, just helping me, be up to date with everything and sort of pulling all the strings and whatnot. So I met him at the barbecue, and I got a picture with him, and I was like, Bob, thank you so much for just for working with me and dealing with all my incessant calls and whatnot,
all my anxiety.
Yeah. So, and this was I think like September of 2022. I'm driving back home to Long Island, and I stop briefly. I get an email from him. And he's like, hey, John, it was nice meeting you. By the way, I just wanted to know, is your grandfather, is his name Tony? And I said, and I'm like, I'm reading this. So I'm like, how would you know that? Like, and he's like, if so, I think I'm related to you. And I'm like, what? No, I'm reading this. And I'm trying to process this I'm reading the email and I'm trying to process this in my mind. So he's like, yeah, if that's your grandfather's name, then I remember him and I have fond memories of him. My wife is actually your mom's cousin. And I was just like, I'm sitting there and I'm reading this. So naturally, like the first thing I do is like, I call my mom and I'm like, hey, do you have a cousin, so-and-so? And she's like, yeah, I was just with her like a few weeks ago. We had to go do like a family funeral or something. And I'm like, okay, well, her husband's the reason why I have like,
this book.
Part. Yeah. And that was just a wild connection.
That is wild.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's a real full circle moment.
That's a full circle moment. Yeah. The fact that he mentioned my grandfather, I mean, cause, even back like growing up, both my grandparents, they were big proponents on like reading and the importance of books and everything like that. So I like to think like for me, that was like sort of like a full circle.
Totally.
Really, really wild. Yeah.
Wow. That's so weird. Were you initially like, what are you talking about? My grandpa's, are you stalking my life?
I think I would have to actually read the email. But when he wrote it out, like it made sense because like, I think he referenced when I spoke to him more, he referenced the party that I remember. Cause like my family had a big 70th birthday party for him. And I remember like he was there at that party. So was I, but I was like a kid. So like I wouldn't remember it until, we actually started like to put the pieces together. It was just very crazy, to say the least. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is so wild. And in stuff like that, doesn't that always make you feel like it's serendipity, like this was supposed to happen kind of thing?
It was definitely like serendipitous too. I mean, from the, just all like the, like the frustrations of like not getting the shots. Like there were periods of like self-doubt. Like, do I have to like go back to Buffalo and like reshoot something? Cause like, it's not what I perceive to be a good photo. I mean, this is just like all stuff that you figure out. I mean, that's kind of like, goes hand in hand with just like the hobby of like urban exploring too,
Totally.
Yeah. No, definitely like it was just a wild experience, like
wow.
And like even like if I would have to judge myself like looking at the photos, I'd be like I think I've come a long way. I think I've learned a couple things or two on like like exposure bracketing, how to like make the most of that too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, and that's such a cool thing about photography too, is the longer you do it, the more evidence you have of your own growth and your own evolution and your own passion. So that's always cool. It's just like writing, I'm sure you get that same experience if you've actually like written stuff down a lot throughout your whole life and you go back to something you wrote even 5 years ago. You're like, whoa, I've evolved a lot in that space.
Sure. Like that is a read to someone else. Like, how can I use like as few words as possible to convey like the most meaning. So like if I showcase stuff in the gallery, like I try to do that, alongside the picture. I think there was another guest that you had. I'm not sure if it was Nola or not that focused a lot on the history of, Okay. Yeah. So like that's awesome. Like, so I kind of like, that's something I like to do as well. So.
Yeah. And I was going to say, when I was watching your YouTube, it definitely made me think a lot of his, because he is a huge sucker for history already. I think that's why he loves exploring. I think it's like history and then exploring it. Or they might be neck and neck. But I appreciate that undertone of history, especially like the deeper dives. And like you said, the medical history of stuff is always so fascinating, because there's usually always that element of, it's sad and it's kind of torturous and it's dark, but there's always this other side of it, where even now as we're exploring it, at least that's the upside, and that chapter of life is over, you know, and there is no more like mishandling of people and patients and so on. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Even like when I was doing, the photography in Kings Park, like there'd be like little things like I would run into, like, like in the buildings, like things that you would never see like in a book or written down. Like, I remember one of the first shots I took, alongside that photo out, the picture on the wall I was telling you about, there was like an old, like medicine room, and like some of the labels were still like adhered to, the doors and the drawers.
Wow.
So you would see things like, that would make sense. That would be there, like gauze, Band-Aids, like sterile wipes. But there was like a label that said Kool-Aid on it. And it just like, random. It was random that would be there. So, through Facebook, I spoke to former employees that worked, in that building, and said like, what does Kool-Aid mean? Like, why would that be there? And they're like, well, when we would give patients medicine, some of that medicine would burn going down. So it would help if we gave them Kool-Aid, to drink with the, like the pills or whatnot, or if it was like a liquid form, we would mix that with Kool-Aid. So that was just like a unique take, so something as seemingly innocuous as a label on a drawer, there's actually like a deeper story behind it. I think that's fascinating,
And you would never think.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Or you could assume the worst. Like I was like, that's how they poisoned them.
Oh my God.
My head goes in the opposite direction immediately. But you hear such terrible stuff from them, it's just like, you never know. You just never know what took place there. And it's nice to know, but I'm glad it's over. But there are things that happen, like you said, that come back around, like COVID, that so closely mirror how we handle those situations when we're confronted with them. And it brings all that kind of stuff full circle for us too. So it's an interesting journey to explore.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. That was definitely worth telling, because that's just how much more, in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing can you be than that. So yeah. Well, thank you again for your time. I totally appreciate it.
Likewise.
And there you have it, a tour through the rusted bones of history with the incredible John Lazzaro. I don't know about you, but I'm already rethinking the way I approach every site, every shadow, and every silent hallway. If you want to dive deeper into John's work, and trust me, you do, check out his books, The Walls Still Talk and A Vanishing New York, and follow his visual journeys over on his YouTube channel and social media accounts, which will all be linked in the description as always. Thank you for coming back and wandering with me through another episode of Echoes of Elsewhere. Don't forget to like, follow, or review wherever you get your podcast. It helps more curious minds find their way into the forgotten. I will be back next week. Until then, keep exploring the allure and the abandoned, the beauty of decay, and the echoes of elsewhere.